You know, our purpose of doing this is really to bring together friends. We basically handpick a group of people that we want to bring together and talk about something that we think is relevant and is important to them. You know, what we try to do with our work at 33 Voices really connect you with the knowledge you need to grow, personally and professionally. And this particular topic that these guys cover has been something that I have kind of been studying for a long, long time. This whole notion of fear.
So when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, what I try to do is separate out risk from uncertainty. And so the fear of risk is, can I actually execute? And can I learn to my craft well enough, right? So if you're paddling out in Ocean Beach, you actually know the point, you know where it's difficult to go out. Can you paddle through it? Is your mind in the right way? If you go to an absolutely new break and you don't pay any attention and you just start paddling out, you actually don't know what's in front of you. Roger Federer, the reason why he can internalize it is because he's already learned the craft to be able to execute that shot, so he can internalize it. So uncertainty is a little bit different. The fear of uncertainty is the darkness that you're talking about. And so I think that's if you can start breaking it down and then tackling the darkness, which I hope you're going to maybe get into next, is how do we train our brains to go into this uncertainty and overcome the fear of what's not known. So separating out what's known and what's unknown. Known is about execution, and that's a lot of trust in yourself or improving your craft or hiring the right people. What's unknown is the big black box out there that's scary in a different way.
So turn the switch on now, that's your cue. And by the way,
I want to know. When you were saying that, you reminded me of a study that was done. They took two groups of people and exposed one group of people to uncertainty and another to just conditions as usual. And what they found was that if you were uncertain, it was, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was something in the vicinity of 75%. 75% of the time, you would mispredict when bad things would happen. So you would think something bad was going to happen because the brain has these two regions that particularly get involved. There's a conflict center and the disgust center, which is also the gut feeling register. And they get really turned on when you're in a position of uncertainty. They start saying bad things are going to happen, but they're wrong. So the first thing to think about in an uncertain situation, when you feel uncertain and then you think bad things are going to happen, I think it's pretty reasonable to say my brain is probably distorting the extent to which bad things are going to happen. The reality is that I don't know. And I'm not saying you have to say good things are going to happen or let's always hope, because good things may not be happening. But I think if you can change it from bad things are going to happen to I don't know, and then learn how to live in I don't know, I think that makes a big difference. And in terms of how to walk in the dark, there's a very extensive sort of paradigm around this. So neuroscientists have looked at walking in the dark in a number of different ways, and I've sort of tried to say, what do our brains do when they are completely, in the dark? What switches can we turn on to try to help them figure out how to move in the dark? And there are a number of ways, but what I'd want to sort of highlight is that we think that, like a lot of the things we're talking about, we all know. Like they're not, maybe some of the studies and some of the technicalities are different, but we also know this intuitively. So what determines a successful person from an unsuccessful person? It's really about being able to retrieve this knowledge when they need it. Just knowing it is not such a big deal. I mean, most people are pretty good at knowing what they need to know for what they want to do. The question is, can you retrieve it? And what happens with fear is that it shuts all these systems down. All of a sudden, the lights are off in every room. So we assume that these lights are on when they're not. Classic example is with the brain of a gambler. If you look at the brain of a gambler as they're pulling a slot machine, the risk center is gone to sleep. The reward center of the brain is activated. So you might say, how can you not see that you're gambling your life away? Well, because the risk center is off. But if you teach a gambler to turn the risk center on, they actually start to make different decisions. So it's the same thing when you're walking in the dark. When you're walking in the dark, you're assuming that you don't know. The first step is to say, you know what, maybe I don't know, but maybe I can turn some switches on. So what information am I getting? And the first thing there's been a computerized paradigm that's actually looked at the way the brain functions in these situations in the dark. The first thing is feedback control. What's high drama versus high impact? Because a lot of times we imagine we're getting all this heavy drama information that actually is not really that relevant, and it's not that high impact. So if you turn that switch on, you ask yourself, literally, even though you know this when I'm saying it now, the next time you're in an uncertain position, ask yourself, I have all these thoughts about I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what's going to happen next, where am I getting this information from? Ask yourself what's high drama and what's high impact. Because that's one very specific way in which you can turn the brain on, you can turn these switches on. The other is what we call impedance control, which is control of resistance. If you're in a place where you're in the dark and you're saying my life's going nowhere, you may think that it's going nowhere because you're not going somewhere, but the truth is there may be something stopping you. So ask yourself, what could be stopping me right now? Have I had an experience that was similar in the past where I messed up? And so I'm afraid to do the same thing because I'm afraid to mess up, or that may be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you start to ask that. And and there are 3 or 4 other mechanisms that have been studied, but maybe I'll tell a short story about this, just to illustrate some of what needs to happen when you're in the dark. I was hanging out with a friend in Milan, and we were sort of joking about a sculptor who we had come across named Anish Kapoor, because Anish Kapoor does these real-life installations in museums, like garbage cans and broken sidewalks. And so we had a couple glasses of wine. We said, oh, let's go to Anish Kapoor's museum exhibit. And as on the way, we saw some garbage trucks, and we were like, Anish Kapoor exhibition. And we saw some broken sidewalk, and we're like, oh, look, another Anish Kapoor. Why do we need to go to the museum? So we go to the museum, we say, well, let's see what they've got to show us. And we go in, and they have a big, long tunnel. And we're like, how interesting, tunnel, whatever. Like, why do I want to go walk in the tunnel? And we said, well, let's just go walk in the tunnel and see what's going to happen. So we walk into the tunnel, and the next thing I know, something that's really obvious, I had not anticipated, which is that when you get past the light, it becomes completely dark. Really obvious. And I suddenly thought, well, this is kind of weird, because this museum's in a weird part of Milan. It feels kind of creepy in here, and I don't really know what's going on. So I think, well, let's just keep on walking. So we walked midway, and as we're walking midway, I said, you know what, this is too weird, because this is Anish Kapoor, and the tunnel's probably going to go on for miles. And now it's going to, because before that I was thinking, what's this going to teach me? And now I'm realizing I'm actually kind of freaked out. So I say, okay, let's go back. And he's like, why? Like, how can we go back? Like, maybe we're just almost at the end of the tunnel. He's like, I don't care. It's too weird. I cannot pay attention. So we turn around, and there's a woman behind us who starts screaming. And she puts out her iPhone, and she's like, where are you guys going? Where are you guys? And I'm thinking, now what do I do? Do I face a screaming woman in the middle of a tunnel? Or do I go to the end? And I said, you know what, let's just walk to the end of the tunnel, because I can't deal. I'm not going to start explaining this. So, and then all of a sudden I realized that there were these like weird, creepy things that started touching my face, and I couldn't tell if the tunnel was actually, the ceiling was lower. And so I started doing things that ordinarily we don't like to do, because we like to be kind of sophisticated. We like to walk upright, and we like to know that we know where we're going. But all of a sudden, I was going down on my knees, touching the sides, and the way I made it to the end of the tunnel was by doing these very crazy things, like feeling my way around, rather than thinking. Like my assumption was that I had to walk upright through the tunnel in order to make it to the other side. But part of what the brain does is what we call sensory motor control. So it actually, if you reach out to the sides of the tunnel, it will tell you where the limits are. And if you go down on the ground, it will relieve your anxiety that you're going to hit your head. So in life, rather than just making our way through the darkness in a sophisticated way, if we reach out and try to figure out what's going to happen, we actually get information. It's a lot like beta testing. You can sit for an entire year and try to imagine what it is people are going to be thinking about, or you can just get the thing out, ask people what they think, get the information back, and then you've got it. And it doesn't feel so cool because you feel like you're giving something out prematurely. But the reality is that sometimes in life, unless you feel your way through, it's difficult for the brain to know how to move through it.